Okay, good evening, everybody. We are very, very fortunate tonight to have one of the world's premier shark biologists with us, Dr. Mikki McComb-Kobza. And I had an opportunity actually to spend time with her a few years ago on a trip to Guadalupe Island, Mexico, where she was researching sharks, actually trying to measure great white sharks by using two lasers that are a specified distance apart and taking photographs of those. So that way she's able to determine the length of those great white sharks. And some of them were 12, 14, 16 feet long. So they were very, very large fish. She has a PhD in integrative biology, and her specialty is sensory biology. And she's going to be with us to answer all of our questions after she tells us a little bit about herself. Okay, Mikki?
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. All right. Can you all see that? Whoops.
Not sure where I'm supposed to be.
Let's see here. Let me try that one more time. Sorry. Let's see here. How about that? Can you see that? I'm not sure I can hear you guys. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we got it.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that. Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and for being at the dive shop. I'm going to be talking tonight about the truth about sharks, which is my passion. And so I'm going to spend some time tonight really dispelling some of the myths and sharing the true story about sharks. And so I'm going to start just by talking a little bit about my path and how I got interested in sharks in the first place. I am right now a director of a nonprofit organization called Ocean First Institute. And we are all about protecting what we love, which is the ocean, and teaching people how they can really get involved in ocean conservation. And our main focus at the Institute is on sharks and shark research and really promoting shark conservation. And so I'm going to share a little story of how I got interested in the first place. And it's a funny story. I grew up in Colorado in the mountains. And as a young kid, I spent a lot of time outside and really fell in love with nature. But things took a real weird turn for me in the summer of 1975. And I know many people, of course, divers have seen Jaws and we know it's all about three guys who were pushed together because of a killer shark off of the coast of the United States. And you know, we've got these three guys. One is a shark hunter. One's the police, the cop of the island, and then you've got a marine biologist. And it doesn't end well, as you know, for the shark killer. And the shark marine biologist is saved and is able to live by escaping in a cage. And then the cop, you know, which is amazing, is in 4 or 5 more Jaws series. So for me, as a young kid, this was a really terrifying movie. So here I am with my brother and friends back in 1975, and I left the movie terrified. And the only way that I knew to overcome this fear that I had of sharks was to read about them. And the more that I read about sharks, the more I realized that they were not monsters, but rather these amazing animals with a long evolutionary history on our planet. And truly, my fear turned into a lifetime fascination. But my path to become a shark biologist was definitely not straight. And I went into the business world as a young adult and was very successful. It was an unemployment insurance company, not the most exciting job. And what was funny to me is that no matter what I was doing, I always had sharks in the background. So at my desk, I had shark posters. I just couldn't kick sharks. And so I had a second chance as a young woman to redirect my career and my life and my passion. And I took that advantage and that opportunity, and I moved down to the Florida Keys from Colorado to become a scuba instructor. I thought that was the smartest way to spend as much time as possible underwater with sharks. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I was able to spend a lot of time underwater with shark friends and get to spend, time with them at reefs that we would visit regularly. And it was just one of the best times of my life. And I had other opportunities that came to me during that time. I ended up becoming a treasure diver in the Caribbean. So there really are pirates of the Caribbean. And it was an exciting adventure to look for treasure alongside treasure hunters that know their history, and was really another extraordinary chapter in my life. And then a very chance encounter led me to this woman, Dr. Sylvia Earle. And this was a very fortunate turn of events for me. I was hired on with National Geographic as a production assistant and showed up on the job. And this is who I met. And so for a week, I got to spend time with Sylvia underwater at the Aquarius habitat, and was filming and learning all about her and her passion and her life's work. And it was extraordinary. And so for me, at the end of that week, I told her my dreams and my aspirations. And she said, "Who's stopping you, Mikki?" I don't know. And so I ended up leaving the Florida Keys, convinced that I wanted to go back to school so that I could have a larger voice for sharks, which I cared so much about. And so I packed my bags and I left the Florida Keys, which was very hard for me to do. I was very sad to leave, and went to the university. And then I hit chemistry. Chemistry, woo, organic chemistry almost killed me. I didn't know if I was going to make it through. Had to take it twice. It was very challenging for me, but I made it through, thank goodness. And I was able to then go all over the world as a biologist, asking questions about sharks and learning about their magnificent adaptations and their history. And that has been the ride that I've been on most of my life. And I have to tell you, it has been absolutely extraordinary to uncover some of the secrets of these incredible animals. And it really is my true passion in life. And I've had some really extraordinary opportunities. I spent time in the Amazon studying stingrays, which are closely related to sharks. Many stingrays are being pulled out of the Amazon basin for the aquarium trade. And so my job was to go down and to try to understand how we could conserve them, to protect them. I spent a lot of time in the Marquesas Keys working on lemon sharks with Dr. Sonny Gruber, who's a very famous shark biologist who ran a lab in Bimini in the Bahamas, trying to understand how these little lemon sharks reproduce and how they find their way. And I also spent time in Australia working on one of the weirdest sharks in the world, and that's the winghead shark. It's part of the hammerhead shark family, trying again to understand why do these sharks have strange head shapes and what does that translate to for their biology. And so as scientists do, we publish our science in the literature, and that allows us to ask questions, try to answer questions, and then build on the science. And that's really critical as we move forward as scientists to be able to know what next questions are. And because I've had the privilege to work on iconic animals, I've had the research I've done on Discovery Channel and National Geographic and others. And it's been a real extraordinary experience to have, some of the research reach millions of people through that outlet. But I'm here tonight not to talk about myself and what I've been able to do, but really to focus on the story of the sharks, which to me is the most fascinating story. And so that's what I'll do now is tell you a little bit about the history of sharks. And that is that if you think about it, our universe is thought to be nearly 14 billion years old, and our planet 4.6 billion years old. And if you look at our planet from space, it's a water planet. There's no arguing it. And if you look at it, we believe as scientists that life arose in the oceans. And things got really big and interesting around 440 million years ago. And that's when we saw the rise of the first jawed vertebrates. And that includes very bizarre species like this one on the left called Heliocoprion, which has what looks like a buzzsaw in its mouth. And then others like Stethiocanthus that has what looks like nearly an ironing board on the back. But keep in mind, that this is, way before the time of the dinosaurs, which we think of as ancient creatures. Dinosaurs arose around 200 million years ago. And so the story of the sharks really is a story of, survival. They've lived through 5 mass extinction events, including the one that took out the dinosaurs. And so the story of the shark really is a story of survival. And they are closely related to other animals called skates and rays. And they are all cartilaginous fishes. So they have skeletons on the inside, just like you and I do. But those skeletons are comprised of cartilage. And they are collectively known as the elasmobranchs. And so because they've been on the planet so long, sharks, skates, and rays have radiated into nearly every aquatic habitat on the planet. So from the brightly lit coral reefs to those muddy waters in the Amazon, to living under ice in the polar regions like this Greenland shark. New research tells us this animal may live upwards of 400 years. And then this frilled shark living in the deep, dark ocean where no sunlight even penetrates, its adaptations in its eyes to maximize its ability to see in this darkened landscape are just incredible. And so when we study sharks, we're really looking back in time as to all of these adaptations that have shaped the species we see swimming in the ocean today. And those are over 500 different species. When I first started studying sharks, there were around 474. Now there's over 509. And we keep discovering more species every year. So I know you guys are divers and you're shark experts, but I want to take you on a quick ride to share some of the coolest shark species on the planet today. And then I'll switch over to just talking a little bit about the research that I do and why I feel that's so critically important. So this is the largest shark in the ocean. This is the whale shark. And I'm sure some of you have swam with whale sharks. And it's an exhilarating experience to see them in the water. They've got beautiful polka dot markings, large fins, and they spend a lot of time near the surface. You can swim right next to them. This is me and my son. And here it is, filter feeding. So of course, whale sharks are feeding on plankton, so tiny little plants and animals. So the largest bodies, in the ocean are being built by nearly microscopic organisms. So that tells you a lot about the energy and how that's moving through the system.
Oh, up there. Yeah, she's still
broadcasting live to everybody else.
Okay.
Are we okay? Is there something wrong? Are we still good? Okay, I'm going to keep going.
We can hear you just fine.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Sorry. And so to go from the biggest shark to the dwarf lantern shark, this is a shark that would fit into the palm of your hand. And this is a shark that also can glow in the dark. And so we have velvet belly lantern sharks that literally have chemicals inside their body that create light, called bioluminescence. And this is incredible. So these sharks literally glow in the dark. They have spines that glow, their bellies glow. And it's thought that this is a form of camouflage and that the sharks' bellies blend into the downwelling light, making them hard for predators to see. And then this is the cheetah of the ocean. This is the fastest shark out there, the mako. Mako sharks can swim upwards of 60 miles an hour. So that's as fast as when you're on the highway. And they have adaptations not only in their bodies to keep their bodies warmer than ambient temperature, but also their eyes. So they superheat their eyes to allow their eyes to move, to process quickly underwater. And so this is a mako swimming after bait, hanging off the back of a boat with a camera. And you can see this shark comes in fast, is able to take the baits right off the back of the boats and get its meal for the night. And so these are animals that, again, have these adaptations to allow for fast eyes, by superheating their bodies on the inside and their eyes higher than the temperature in the surrounding water, which is really a pretty rare thing. We don't see that in a lot of sharks. This is one of the coolest sharks out there. So it's called the big eye thresher. It has a big eye, but the action in this shark is in the tail. So it has what's called a heterocersal tail. That means one lobe is longer than the other, and it uses it as a weapon to stun fish in schools. And so the tail will whip around, stun fish. The shark will turn around and get an easy meal. So this is a physical adaptation that manifests in allowing the shark to successfully feed using its tail as a weapon. So it's like the Indiana Jones of the shark world, which is just incredible. And then this is the blue shark. This is probably arguably one of the most beautiful of the sharks. It's a very torpedo-shaped animal. And unfortunately, blue sharks, they live all over the globe, but they've been really targeted for their fins because they have very long fins for shark fin soup. Another species you all know, tiger sharks, they're the #2 most dangerous shark in the world. And it's really just because of their ability to eat whatever they want. Tiger sharks have really interesting teeth, and they have an appetite where we find cameras, wine bottles, fur coats. We found an entire suit of armor inside of tiger shark bellies. So they are sort of the garbage cans of the ocean, so to speak. They're not very discriminate feeders, but they are absolutely gorgeous. And if any of you have been at Tiger Beach, I'm sure you have, you've seen how absolutely gorgeous these animals are. And then this is the sand tiger. So shares the name, but is very different in its look. And it also has a very unique feature. Sand tiger sharks have, they give birth to live young. But what's interesting is the developing pups on the inside, they undergo cannibalism. And so the pups on the inside will actually eat each other. And the largest pup then will be the one that is born. And so it's a form of, evolution to produce the largest, most fittest pup from the sand tiger shark. And they have twin uteri within the sand tiger shark, and the pups can actually swim between those two in the female. So it's absolutely amazing, the reproductive capacities of these animals. This is the epaulette shark. So we really do have land sharks. Sharks can walk on land. It is absolutely true. This is the case in point. So epaulette sharks live in northern Australia, and they use their side fins or their pectoral fins to move over the reef in an action called punting. And that allows them to move and find little fish that are trapped in tidal pools and be successful hunters. This is the cookie cutter. Cookie cutters this is a preserved one. That's why it looks especially awful. But cookie cutters have those little teeth on the top and they're very large, sharp teeth on the bottom. And they'll actually come up to a fish and they'll get onto the side and then they'll spin and cut out a chunk of flesh. So you can see here, this fish has the signature tail sign of a cookie cutter bite out of its body. And that's exactly what it looks like. All right, and then this is, it's like Halloween all year long with this. This is the goblin shark. And you can see here the goblin shark has this really long snout. And the snout doesn't look much better from the front here. So you can see here, it's the same. And the snout is thought to have, it's full of sensory structures to help the goblin shark find its prey. Goblins are deep sea sharks. And what's interesting though, is that the goblin shark can actually have its jaws protrude out quite far. And this really allows the goblin, it's just crazy. It's like the movie Alien. But it allows the goblin shark that really important opportunity to grab its deep sea prey, which it may only have one opportunity to grab on to something in the deep ocean. And so this is an adaptation to really allow the goblin shark that extra chance, that extra opportunity to feed. So to have that really long snout one way and then the long expanded head the other way, hammerheads are truly incredible animals. They school together in the hundreds. I'm sure many of you here have been on trips to the Galapagos, to Darwin, where we see schools of scalloped hammerheads in the hundreds. They have social structure. They have hierarchies. There are communications between dominant and subordinate schoolmates here. So it's more than we ever really understood, that hammerheads have this really intricate social dynamic. Hammerheads are the most recent evolved sharks in the ocean, only around 10 million years old. And, you know, the question has to be, why do they have this bizarre head shape? Is it beneficial to them or is it maladaptive? And so I spent much of my PhD asking these questions. What you might not know is there's multiple hammerhead shark species, some that look like bonnet heads on the top of that figure, all the way down to absolutely bizarre with the winghead shark that you can see there, and everything in between. So hammerheads, the mystery is really there. They've got this bizarre head shape. This is what the winghead looks like. And it is in Northern Australia. I was in Darwin, Australia with this particular one, studying the head shape. So when you look at an X-ray of a hammerhead, you'll notice it has a huge skull called a chondrocranium. And it also has its optic nerves going to the eyes that are set on the sides of the head. All of the sensory structures have been sort of pulled apart. And we were asking, what has that done to the way they experience their world? And so one of the most fundamental aspects about, sensory is vision. And so I was really interested with the hammerheads on whether they could even see straight ahead. You know, their eyes are pointing straight out on this bizarre head. Can they see ahead? And so I did tests with multiple different types of hammerhead species to determine their three-dimensional visual field. And I did that by doing a test called an electroretinogram. So the eye is an electrical organ. You can shine light around the head and figure out what the three-dimensional visual field is. And what I found was astounding. I found that all sharks can see straight ahead, but their overlaps of each eye's visual field varied depending on the species. And what was bizarre is the hammerheads have bigger overlaps in front of their heads than the regular sharks. And so it was a dramatic finding. We didn't expect that. I didn't even think hammerheads could see ahead, but they do. So they have excellent binocular overlaps, larger than normal sharks. And what we also determined, though, is they have these big blind spots. And the blind spots go out about a meter ahead of the shark. And that's really weird to me because they don't have hands. And so if they're trying to find food in this visual space where they can't see anymore, what do? And so I measured and mapped out how big their blind spots were, and it's big. And so I started to think about it. If they can't use hands, they don't have any way to get that information about where the animals are, the fish are in front of their heads. What do? And so I started to think about another sensory system the sharks have, and that's the electrosense. So all sharks have the ability to detect living things underwater using their electrosensory system. So those black peppery dots on the snout here are jelly-filled canals called the ampullae of Lorenzini. And so sharks
The
can detect
Elasmobranch
it.
research labs in Florida, scientists have devised an experiment to see what sense the hammerhead is using when taste, smell, touch, sight, and hearing just aren't enough. Might they be able to detect that electric field? By placing electrodes under the floor of the tank, they can replicate the electricity generated by a prey item. In theory, the sharks should be able to detect that minute pulse.
It will get the sharks to come in and bite at the electrodes, just as if it were a fish or a crab or something buried under the sand.
It will be the hammerhead's sense of smell that will first trigger the urge to hunt.
Squid juice.
Squid juice.
We're just using odor just to trigger them.
We use different senses from different distances. So you can imagine a shark might get a smell of the wounded prey struggling just under the sand from perhaps tens of meters away.
The shark goes into classic hunting mode, swimming in ever tighter figures of 8 to try and detect the source of the smell. But at the last minute, Steve throws the switch.
Electrode is on. Right.
Coming in.
Strike.
Good bite. Good bite at 2. Good bite at 2.
So that's what happens. So the sharks would come in and bite at this weak electric field that we generated with a battery. And so I was able to do several experiments. And you can see here the shark is coming in, attacking what is basically a battery. And this is what sharks really do detect when they have crabs or fish. This is what a living thing generates. It's an electric field. And so based on how far away sharks can detect this, we were able to mirror out around the head how far out that electrosense goes. And not surprisingly, it perfectly covers that visual void that's around the head. So at the end of the day, what we discovered is just that these sharks have over millions of years really fine-tuned their sensory systems to help them, experience their world in perfection. And it's really exciting in Miami right now. There's an exhibit of this work that I did on display. And so you can go check out a hammerhead shark, and you can put on a little mask that you see these kids putting their heads in to get a glimpse of what it's like to be a hammerhead, to have this expansive binocular overlap, and they can almost see behind them as well because of the placement of the eyes. So you may be saying, okay, that's interesting, but what does that really do for sharks and for the world? And that's a great question, and one that I have thought about a lot during my degree. And the elephant in the room as I was getting my degree was that more and more and more sharks were dying, and that the global decline in sharks was increasing. And we were seeing, our beloved hammerhead sharks have their fins cut off while they were alive so that could be sold for shark fin soup. And so that's the main driver. Anywhere from 40 to 100 million sharks per year fall victim to the shark fin trade. And this includes the great hammerhead and scalloped hammerhead. And they are now critically endangered species, just like, elephants and rhinos. And so I have to have special permits in order to even research these animals now. And this has happened on my watch. During the time that I've been studying them, they have declined to this level. And so this, I think in my belief, I really wanted to change some of the work that I did and focus really on how to hit the ground for conservation. And so I found colleagues in Costa Rica that were working on scalloped hammerhead sharks in this beautiful tropical fjord. And they were noticing little scalloped hammerhead babies swimming in this beautiful bay. And they wanted to know if this was a place that was important as a nursery for these animals. And these are females that are coming in from Galapagos and Mapelo into southern Costa Rica, where this bay is. And so I teamed up with this group called Mission Tiburon to tag and track these little hammerheads just to see if this was indeed a nursery area where the females were having their babies, and if it was a place of special importance that should be protected. Because after all, if you're trying to save a species, the one thing you want to do is to make sure that you have babies and that they're able to survive back into adulthood to replenish the population. And so lo and behold, it was determined through the study by Mission Tiburon that this was indeed a hammerhead shark nursery. And the Costa Rican president declared it as the world's first hammerhead shark sanctuary. And I couldn't have been more proud of that work and the implications that came from that work. So, these animals are holding on by a thread. And the least I think we can do as biologists and people who dive and care is to really work on ways to support their conservation. So I'm going to switch gears. I have about 10 more minutes left. And so I want to just switch gears a little bit and talk about white sharks. White sharks are sort of the poster children and really an exciting animal to work on. This is in what Dan was talking about earlier. This is in Guadalupe, Mexico, off the Baja. And this is deep blue. This is a shark that has a name. It's a female. She's large. She may be pregnant. We don't know. But if she were pregnant, we do know that great whites can have upwards of 5 to 7 shark pups inside their bodies. And so the girth of these animals, these large females, it gets to be really big. And you can see she's large. The maximum size of white sharks is about 22 feet, and they live about 70 years. And so when they reproduce, they're probably in their 30s. And they can reproduce every 2 years, we believe, but we're still trying to figure that out. Dan also talked about going on a trip with me, and these are some of the shots that Dan, as a professional underwater photographer, took of my effort, and I'm so grateful for that. I was down trying to measure sharks to understand how big they were, because as Dan knows, many of these sharks come back year after year after year. And so it represented an opportunity to see the growth of these animals and to understand and estimate their sizes. And again, that's just one layer of data that helps you understand the population of these animals. And so we were using 2 lasers that were set a known distance apart with a camera in the middle. And you would basically shine the light onto the side of the sharks when they swam by. And that is essentially putting a ruler on the side of the shark. And then you can go back to the video footage and you can calculate the length of the animal. And so we were able to successfully do that on that trip, and have been using this technology to help us measure sharks and to teach others how to do citizen science, which has been really exciting. I also was able to do a live broadcast from the cage with Dre Stockert, which is a friend of Dan's, who he's going to be with in about a week, which is so exciting. She was able to broadcast from the cage some of the discussions about white shark biology and ecology. And it was really a pretty exciting opportunity.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Mikki, and I'm here in Eastwood, Guadalupe, shark diving.
And so we, through the use of technology, want to bring the students out on site to the learning station where the scientists are there so they can interact with them, participate with them, and be part of the ocean science.
So that was a really exciting opportunity to beam into classrooms all over the world. And we saw very strange behaviors. During this trip, this was filmed by one of the guys on the trip. And it looks like this white shark has a hairball. And so this is sort of the head shake. a little bit of territoriality, a little bit of we don't know. And again, what's interesting to me is these are apex predators, and some of their behaviors still elude us, and we're still learning, which I think is fascinating. And so one of the things that I'm working on now is trying to understand white sharks that live on the northeast coast of the United States, and trying to understand the number of sharks that we might have. Where do they go during the seasons? Where do they mate? Where do they have their babies? Just really basic life history of some of these animals. And so I partnered up with an organization that has allowed me to go out and have access to these animals to answer these questions. And there are 24 different research projects with 42 scientists. And the goal was to sample 100 sharks and really to try to understand, again, their basic life history. So this is the large vessel which we operate off of, and then a small chase boat that will set a hook and line to catch the shark. The shark is then brought to a platform that comes out of the water. And that's when scientists go out to collect data as quickly as possible. So I'm there doing some work on some tags to understand the movement of the animal. And then as soon as everyone has collected all of the data that they need, the shark is then returned back to the wild. And so I'm doing some blood sampling, and then the shark is released back to the wild. And so again, we do measurements, we draw blood to understand more about the reproductive biology, stress hormones, all kinds of things. We do ultrasounds to understand heartbeats, also to look at organs, and also to look at pregnant females to try to understand more about pups. And we also swab some of the shark's teeth to learn more about microbiology, so some of the bacteria that grow on the teeth. And then we also tag the animals in order to track their movements. Again, it's a team where everyone is working hard to collect as much data as possible on these animals that are very difficult to find and catch. One of the big projects that I'm working on with this team is to deploy what are called BRUVs. These are baited cameras that we place underwater. And when we do these baited cameras, this is what they look like. So they're cameras with bait that bring in the sharks by smell. And you can kind of see here, let me go back here. This is what it looks like when we deploy these cameras off of the vessel. So we go out on a small boat and set the bait, and then the sharks will come in, and we're able to film the sharks. And this allows us to understand the markings, the sex. We try to understand the length by using our lasers. And it really does give us a glimpse into these sharks, trying to understand how many there are in an area. So it's really valuable. You can see this is in Massachusetts, in Nantucket. This is a juvenile who comes in. And so we're able to, again, understand some of the dynamics. Where do the adults go? Where are some of the juveniles? And this is up north in Nova Scotia. And you can see we've got a very large female that comes in. And again, the females get beat up. So they've got a lot of scarring on their bodies. And we've got yet another one. And they get really frisky. They'll come after the cameras. They'll come after the bait. So it's always interesting to watch some of the footage and what they do. And I've lost a lot of cameras over the years, for sure. And this is a tiger shark that took a lot of our cameras. So tigers, as I mentioned, are not discriminate feeders. So we lose cameras to them quite often. This is footage of a mako off the Carolina coast. And it's been great to be able to, again, see which species are in which of these areas. So these are some of the things that we're able to look at. Again, markings. You may have heard sharks don't get cancer. This is a shark with an external tumor. So they definitely do. And this is not common, but it has been seen before in great whites. And then one of the last things I'd like to leave you with is just another project I work on where I can collect water from where I deploy my cameras and take that water back to the lab, and I can put onto a filter any of the DNA that I can extract from the water sample. And that lets me look for white sharks. And so I can get the presence of a white shark just by collecting water samples now, which is incredible. So this is called environmental DNA. And I'm doing this regularly now off of the coast to look for species that are hard to find. So it's just another tool that we use as biologists to really help us understand where these animals are going. And the last little snapshot I'll leave you with is in the North Atlantic. Our collaborative project has shown that white sharks go all the way from Nova Scotia, Canada, down to Louisiana and back. So these animals are moving vast distances in a short amount of time, which is just incredible. And I do have one more last thing to tell you, and that is great white sharks globally are really increasing. However, in South Africa, there's been a twist to the story. Many of you have probably heard about this. Killer whales have moved into Cape Town area, and they have displaced the very commonly sighted white sharks that were part of the white shark diving community there. And so my team went down to South Africa to see if we could find and tag white sharks there.
I'm Dr. Mikki McComb-Kobza. I'm the director of Ocean First Institute, and I'm here in South Africa on a white shark mission. And I'm here with our partners, South African National Parks, Ocean Conservation, Exploration, and Education Foundation, and Rhodes University, all to find out what's happening to white sharks here. The whole world knows now that we have had white sharks leave the area because of killer whales. And our goal here is to be able to tag the shark to find out where they are going.
And that's exactly what we were able to do.
In Cape Town, where white sharks were very regular.
So you can see here, this is one of our white sharks. And again, it took us many days even to find this one shark, just because they have been displaced by the killer whales that are killing the great white sharks and eating their livers. And so these poor white sharks have skedaddled out of the area, and we were able to tag one with a pop-off satellite tag, and that will allow us to understand where are they going. It could be Australia, it could be further up the east coast of Africa. We just are not really sure yet, but it's part of a greater project that we're working on to try to help us understand. One of the other things that was really exciting, this is when we were able to tag it. So we were really excited about that. And then this is when we were able to see that tagged shark on our baited camera. So the white shark went by with our tag. So we were thrilled to make sure that the tag was on and to see the shark swimming around right there in South Africa. And I think that's it. I'm right at time. So I think before I go any further, I'm going to stop sharing and take questions.
Yeah. And I do have a few questions. Thank you for that. Actually, it was fascinating information.
Sure.
A couple of questions. One from Easton Worthington, who wants to know what the biggest misconception is in your mind as far as sharks are concerned.
I think the biggest misconception is that all sharks are going to eat you when you go in the water. I think that's the biggest misconception I see. You know, when I go diving, it's hard for me to find sharks. I try really hard. And it's not as if when you jump into the water, there's going to be hundreds of sharks swimming around you. And I think that is the misconception. I think people that aren't divers think that there are sharks everywhere, and there just aren't. You're lucky to see them, honestly.
Well, along with those same vein, Clinton Ewart has said, have you ever had a close call?
I've had a few close calls with sharks. Probably the closest was a very snappy lemon shark. Surprisingly, lemon sharks are very snappy and bitey. So I've had a couple of close calls with lemon sharks. But you know, funny enough, not the big white sharks. It was a little tiny lemon shark.
Okay. Okay. Says, how do sharks find each other when they want to mate, especially since there's no mating apps that they can use?
Yes. Oh, that's such a wonderful question. And we don't know. And if you want to become a shark biologist and study that question, you would be a hero because we really don't know. We think that they may use pheromones, which are chemicals that have a certain attractiveness, like perfume. We think they may go to the same areas historically to find each other, but the answer is we truly don't know.
Okay. We have a question from Mueller Michael. Says, can DNA be gathered by divers?
Absolutely. I'm simply collecting water in a canister at depth and then bringing that back to the boat. So if divers wanted to collect water, that could be used for eDNA analysis. That's absolutely true. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Well, I had somebody ask me a question today actually about a coming trip to the Antarctic. Are there any sharks in the Antarctic?
Ah, that's a good question. You know, some of the deep sea sharks are very long-lived cold water sharks. And so we have Greenland sharks. We have species that may live there that we don't even know about. We just don't know. So the answer is we don't really know. And we are just really scratching the surface when it comes to deep sea research. And that includes describing species that we don't know about. So I would never say no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, make sure if we see any, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Also, we had a question from Samantha Zita that says, what advice do you have for someone hoping to become a marine biologist?
Don't give up. Keep going. No matter what. Just, you know, I talked about organic chemistry being a barrier for me. You know, don't ever give up. Believe in yourself. And, you know, these animals need champions. They need people to be their voice. And, you know, there is a great need, in my opinion, for people to become marine biologists and to really champion this ecosystem, which ultimately, when we take care of the ocean, we take care of ourselves. And we need more people to really be champions for that. So I hope you keep going.
Okay. And Mueller also had another question about where can you find some of your published journals or your published articles?
Yeah, you can reach out to me directly. You can also go to our website and you can find some of them there. And if you want to email me, I can share what I've got. I would love to. Absolutely.
Okay, and Mueller also had another question about if you do collect DNA samples, where do you send them?
That's a great question. You'd have to work with me. So samples are expensive. It's expensive to do the analysis. And we have special filter paper that the water needs to flow through that captures the DNA. And then we take that paper to the lab where we have a process where we extract the DNA and then we match it to the primers for white sharks. And so it's a pretty lengthy, expensive process. So if you're interested in collecting, we would have to figure out a process there.
Okay. Also, someone said, is there something you can do as a diver to conserve sharks here in the U.S.?
I think as divers, you are the best suited candidates to be the ambassadors for sharks. There is no other person in the world who is more educated and has the experience that you do as divers. Go out there and tell people what it's like to look a shark in the eye. Tell them what it's like to swim with them. Let people know that they're not monsters, that they're amazing creatures and they're older than trees. You are the ones that spend time with these animals. So there's no better person in the world than you to go out and let people know.
Okay. Well, we have a question from something called Some Shark. I'm not sure if that's actually a real shark asking the question, but do you have a favorite species?
You know, I kind of flip-flop around a little bit, but I really do love hammerhead sharks because they're just so weird and they're really interesting, and I've spent a lot of time with them. But you know, there's so many, so it's hard to say. There's over 500 different ones to pick from.
Okay. And do you have a free shark course on your website?
I do. Please go to oceanfirstinstitute.org And if you go under what we do, there is an online course tab. Please take it. oceanfirstinstitute.org, and you will find it, and please take it. It is, I wrote it, and it's meant to help people understand more about the long history of sharks and their story. So I hope you can take it. And if you have any trouble, you let me know. I can help you out.
Okay. Do we have any questions from anybody here? No? No questions? No? Yes, ma'am. What is your email address?
I am Mikki, which is MIKKI at oceanfirstinstitute.org. O-R-G.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, no other questions, and I want to thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and thank you for everything you do to expand the body of knowledge about sharks.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Thank you so much, and thank you, Benjamin, for having me tonight. Thank you guys so much.
Take care. Good seeing you again.
Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr. McComb.
Bye-bye.